so we're here today to talk about sugar. We know
That's a tough
that
one.
it's a tough one. Not everyone likes to talk about sugar because, honestly, we all like sugar. We all eat sugar.
Yeah.
Our kids eat sugar. They crave sugar. We have sugar
It's everywhere.
addictions. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's, it feeds your brain happiness. So,
Yes.
so it's a really, really hard topic
Yeah.
to talk about because it's just,
It's kind of hidden in everything
it's
if
hidden
we're
in
not
everything
aware of
too.
it. Yeah. Even the things that we're not really realizing
Hmm.
can have it in there.
Yeah, so something that comes up a lot in
Mm-hmm.
my practice and maybe
Mm-hmm.
in yours too is I'll always say, okay, let's eat nutritious foods and then let's maybe
Right.
limit sugar. And I'll mention that to people. And
Yeah.
the first thing out of either the child's mouth or the mom or dad's mouth is, well, we don't eat
Oh,
candy
I
or
knew.
we don't eat
Yeah.
candy a lot.
Right. Right. Right.
We limit candy. And so that's awesome. I mean, candy is
Yeah.
pure
Pure sugar.
sugar. So we should be limiting candy, maybe on a special occasion, right? Like for treats,
Yes.
Valentine's Day, things like
Yes.
that.
Exactly.
But I think the biggest point and something that we should
Mm-hmm.
discuss is that sugar's in so many other things.
Right.
You
And
know,
those hidden ones are sneaky because you can get a lot of it.
mm-hmm.
And
And it
it
adds
doesn't,
up.
yes. And you don't even realize you start to get on sort of this sugar emotional roller coaster of like the highs and lows of it, right? So it becomes a little bit of a roller coaster, not only for adults, but can you imagine kids and teens who still have a developing brain, right? That they're still
Right.
trying to regulate emotions and deal with disappointments and stresses and
Mm-hmm.
add sugar in there and it just feels like it's like explodes kind of,
Right,
right?
right. I agree. So, and sugar affects everyone differently,
Right.
right? And so some people may be more sensitive and their
Mm-hmm.
body may not be able to process it as well. And you can notice that. Well, then some kids, it's like, oh, well, my kids eat sugar and they're fine. But what is it doing on the inside?
Yeah.
So, okay, so some other sugars that we definitely need to bring up and mention
Mm-hmm.
are, and it's really not always our fault. It's
Right.
the food companies and the culture we live in, right? Because
Yeah.
it's sneaking into everything. And the food company knows they want to sell a product.
Right.
So they're a business and they want to sell something and they want to make it taste as good as possible. And,
We start to
to
kind of build
people,
habits. Don't you find like habits and like our relationships start to build with the sugar and relationships we have with people start to build with
and
sugar?
memories.
Yes, memories. We can start to even use it as something we look forward to with like rewards, like let's get this if we do this, and so it becomes like this whole shift that we really have to become mindful of, even where it's getting into our body and our mind. And like what you were saying, it affects everyone differently.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of noticing, do I seem to have like a sugar crash? Do I seem to be a little more short tempered? Or do I always gravitate to sugar when I'm stressed?
Mm-hmm.
Like have I developed a little bit of a pattern? Because sugar definitely calms our nervous system when we're feeling a stress response, and it can become our go-to habit. I mean, we've all been there, right? We've downed like a box of cookies when we're feeling nervous or stressed or have this really intense day. And maybe we see it with our kids too, but we're almost having to point it out for them. And so that can be a tricky thing too, is starting to know how to replace those things. We really just have to become mindful of it 1st. Mm-hmm. So that's a big thing too.
Yeah. So, okay, let's cover some of
where it's getting in. Yeah.
Where is it getting in? So I think most important, it's in almost everything. I mean, it's, I hate to, say it's not, but that's when it becomes important to actually look at what you're eating. Turn it over, look at the added sugar, look at the ingredients, get to know products. Certain products are a little bit better, they'll have less sugar. So that's when like our doc swaps could be helpful. But also just remember that the more whole foods that you eat, protein, an avocado, a sweet potato,
it's
salad,
less sneaky sugars, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They're not gonna. There's no way to sneak sugar really into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we push and why it's important to eat a lot of whole foods, because that's probably the safest way to not get a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
But if you are eating some snack foods, some processed foods and stuff, you just have to turn them over, because you can, like we talked about the yogurt, you can go get a yogurt with 20 grams of sugar and then one with 4. And you may not really know how to look for this.
Right. And it's one thing if it's like an intentional thing, like, hey, I want to have a splurge, I want to have this sugar, but it really feels frustrating if you're thinking you're eating something healthy
100%.
and it's slipping in and you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that was getting into my diet. Exactly. Or I thought I was giving my child or my teen this healthy option. I didn't realize it was loaded with sugar. And, when you were saying that, I thought about the journals, because the journals are intentionally made with ways to become mindful of it. And not only for parents or adults, we're really wanting to teach our kids and teens, because at some point they're going to be away from us, whether it's a birthday party, middle school, sleepaway camp, college. So they're going to be away from us at some point. So we want them to have the skills and the awareness to navigate those moments. Just like you said, if it's not a whole food, how do they look at it and really investigate what's in it to be mindful of what they're putting in their body and how it's going to make their mind feel.
Yeah, and I mean, even to elaborate on that, with it may not just be the candy or the ketchup with a lot of sugar. I mean, most people don't realize that like bread, pasta, a lot of the refined carbs, the quality of that is just not what it used to be. So it's not that you're eating this delicious homemade bread, but we're eating very processed bread and very processed grains, right? So that also is all going to turn into sugar when you eat it. So just eating a sandwich for lunch with 2 pieces of bread and then maybe putting a snack bar in there. I mean, you can far exceed 20 grams of sugar, where you're like, oh, wow, I packed the lunch. You think you're doing an amazing job, right? You're waking up early. You're spending the time to do it. You're making them a healthy sandwich. And you're putting just some really good, even some healthy, snacks in their lunch kit, but the sugars add up.
Yeah. And in the mom brain, I'm thinking like, I'm packing them a lunch so that I know what they're getting, so that when they go into that exam or that test or that next class, that I'm preparing them to be their best. And so I think that that's a huge thing to point out, is sometimes just that awareness of learning how to read the labels, the sneaky sugars that are popping in, and then how it's affecting our body is huge. Right, is awesome.
Yeah, and I think you can pull that back to protein, and we always talk about protein's important because there is no sugar in protein. Healthy fats as well. And then fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, almost think of like safe foods.
Right.
Like,
that.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about it with this. Yeah, as much as we can.
As much as you can. Yeah, and then just be mindful of the amount of sugar in all your products.
Yes.
And, really learning just the day-to-day of what kids are eating and,
and building the relationship with food. So understanding why they're eating what they're eating, why we're eating what we're eating is a huge piece of it. So if you can become mindful of it, and then if you feel those cravings, if you can take those couple minutes where we know it's going to pass, it's just so hard in that moment. If you can drink some water, take a walk, do something that you enjoy that's other than giving into that craving of sugar, and it'll pass. And then rewiring that habit to be more constructive or healthier for our mind and our body. So maybe learning some breathing techniques or grounding ourselves in the moment. So we're navigating those stressful moments without kind of covering it with the sugar, right?
And even after dinner, right? So after dinner, go for the family walk. Yes. I mean, we talk about getting our steps in and all that, but right after dinner, don't even clean the dishes. Just go for a walk.
Just get out and
go around the block a couple times. Talk to your kids. You don't have that much time to do that sometimes,
And the connection is so good, yeah.
Right, and by the time you get home, you may not have that craving anymore. Like, oh, I need something sweet.
Right.
It may have passed. And so I think that's important, of finding little almost habits or tricks that work for you.
Yes.
And that work for your kids. A lot of distractions and things like that.
To get through those tricky moments. And then like telling yourself, wow, that was really great. Like noticing that you got through that and that you didn't need it. And you kind of you're forming a new habit instead.
Right. And that feels really good.
Yes, definitely.
It almost feels like you're in control.
Yes.
Versus that the sugar's in control.
Right. Which we don't love. Right. Yeah. That's a great point.
So let's talk about sugar and how it can affect their mood, their behavior.
Right.
I mean, it's what you do every day, right?
Yes, right. Those meltdowns. So we kind of have like these natural developmental moments where we're trying to teach emotional regulation. But the sugar, you feel like it almost just adds like these zigzag emotions. It makes everything a little bit bigger. It makes it a little harder to navigate the skills that we had built. Right. So in those moments, even with meltdowns, when you're trying to reflect with your child and be present and then have a teachable moment or distraction to switching to something else, if we've added sugar into the equation, just kind of be mindful of that everything might feel a little bit bigger. So if we can kind of switch those moments, or just become mindful of, wow, every time they have that particular product or that moment of the day where, what have they just eaten? We tend to have a sugar crash or meltdown would be huge to figure out. Like maybe it is what's going into their body that's translating into their mind, that's really just making that roller coaster too big for them at that moment.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'll tell my patients. And not everybody knows this, but some people will come to me and say, gosh, after lunch or around this time, they went to the school nurse. They didn't feel good.
Oh,
they started getting pale, faint, nauseous.
Interesting.
And they have these, and of course that can be a lot of different things. But what I always say is, okay, let's talk about it. Let's break it down. They're eating a meal. 2 hours later, that's when that glucose is in that body, right?
Yes.
That's when that meal and that sugar from that meal, if there is a lot of sugar in the meal, it's rising. and then that your insulin, right? So from your pancreas, that insulin's coming in and it's pushing down the glucose, and then you're going to have that dip. And so that dip, which is about 2 hours later, is when I'll tell parents to kind of look out for that. And sure enough, they're like, yeah, it happened about 2 hours after the birthday party. And, it's almost like this crash, this low sugar event that can really look and make a child really feel sick, nauseous.
Yeah.
And we know how that feels, but kids aren't used to that, and they don't know why it's happening.
No, I was just thinking that when you said we kind of know how it feels, and we can try to modify our thoughts in those moments where we go into some place and we're like, we want it all, right? This all looks so delicious. But there's a piece of us that we've developed those coping skills and that self-talk to be able to say, okay, I can't have it all. I'll feel awful. I won't be able to think. Yes. So you're right. I think that's a huge thing, is just to remind all of us that it's our kids too and our teenagers too, and we're adding in all of this growth and development, and it can really make them feel awful.
It's great to teach them when they don't feel good. It's not like you're going to say, oh, well, that's because you had sugar and you should never eat sugar again. But you can say, like, okay, let's talk about what you ate.
Yeah.
Maybe next time, let's make sure we eat a little protein. Let's make sure we eat our chicken
yes.
first before we go to the birthday party, or let's cook a good breakfast and eggs before we have a donut.
Yes.
Just ways to kind of get them aware that, oh, wow, my mom was right, or oh, wow, like this food really did make me feel well. And that's what the journal helps with too.
It does. It helps a ton with that. And I think that what I'm hearing too is like the relationship with food. We want you, like you were saying earlier, like for them to be in control of what they're putting in their body and not just giving into this tossed around by the cravings of the day.
Right.
So I think you're right. If they know they really want to go to the birthday party and have the cake, or they want to be at the parade and have the king cake, like you said, do the protein, maybe a little bit less so that they don't have that crash, but they can still enjoy and be in the moment with their friends or their family. So I love that. Maybe just modifying. Don't just take it out completely. Maybe start small, just reducing it a little bit so that they don't get the big crashes.
Right. And I think it's so hard, right? It's such an overwhelming topic. We've talked about a lot of things, but I think some tips that we can throw out there for you guys would be helpful tips that maybe make this a little bit easier. So you're not watching this saying like, oh my gosh, sugar again.
Yes, sugar's,
how do we do this? This is let's just throw this video away because
it's too much. We love sugar.
Right.
The sugar monsters all are like fighting us here.
So I think really we touched on one, protein, right? I know we always go back to protein, but it really is. It's such an awesome food, and it's satiating, and it keeps kids out of the pantry. It keeps kids full. And it's just a way to kind of not have those sugar cravings. So that's one. Also fruit. I mean, if you're having a sugar craving, this is great for a kid or an adult. I'll see my husband have a thing of blueberries after dinner. He's having a sugar craving, but I'm like, okay, you grab blueberries. That's great. So just find those little...
To quench it.
Yeah, to quench it. Or like I said, go take the walk. But fruit's great. I mean, fruit is sweet. It does have sugar and fructose, but it's not, packed with that fiber, so it doesn't affect your body the same way.
Yeah, it might not be as much of a roller coaster.
Right. Staying hydrated. Okay, so increasing water. If your kids are like, we want sugar, be like, okay, maybe they're not hydrated. Maybe their electrolytes are off balance. So be like, okay, let's drink this whole thing of water and then tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah, I love that.
Sleep.
Yes.
So if we're tired, that goes along with being stressed as well. And kids can be stressed just like adults. If they have tests coming up. If they are having some struggles with their friends or at school, they can be stressed too. And getting enough sleep, which will help with the stress, which then helps with the sugar cravings,
makes a big difference.
All goes together.
And you know what I also notice is sometimes, have y'all found this even with yourself, is like associating a behavior with something else. So for instance, getting on a device to watch a movie and then grabbing a snack that might have some sugar in it. So so kind of becoming mindful of that, like, wow, are they even enjoying it, right? Are they watching something on their device, or
you didn't even notice you just ate the whole bowl?
Yes, yeah.
You're like, oh wow, like you don't even know.
Right. So instead of being like, you can't eat that anymore, like I catch myself doing this, like, that's such a bad habit, we're not going to do it anymore. And then I'm like, okay, wait, hold on, they enjoy that. Let's reduce it, okay, and be mindful of when you're eating it. Let's not just eat it kind of like without even knowing what's going into your body while you're watching in a distracted way. Right. So that's something you can think about too. Is doing it in a mindful way. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think definitely check out our program, connectthedocs.life. We have a whole connection on this.
We have a whole
so much more.
That was one of our longer ones.
Yes.
But it will give you that step-by-step guide. Okay, do this first, do this first. So, we can talk about this all day long, but if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, definitely join the program and check out the connection on sugar to help you. Because we made it very we took all the research, we put it all out there, and we made it step by step and easy for
right.
you.
You don't have to feel overwhelmed. And the journals will help too. The journals break it down. The connection gives you all the information you need. So it's just a great opportunity to learn more about this.